Yes.
I have been educated and I thought I was educated as it
Right.
related to domestic violence as an advocate for domestic violence and, abuse, period. But I have learned so much. And I'm
Yes.
so grateful to all of our guests that have
Yeah.
came on to the
Yes,
show,
yes,
Thank you,
to New
guys.
Wine. It's just been awesome, right?
It
it has
has
been.
been.
It's
So,
been really
and we
good.
have two awesome ladies in the house on tonight.
Yay.
Give it up for the awesomeness phenomena. I am so grateful. These women come with so much information, and I just
Yes.
believe that if you are a parent and if you have children and if you are a woman in a relationship, please tune in. You need to be aware of what is going on. About ourselves, and then we jump right in. Go for it.
So I'm Lori Fox, and I'm so grateful to be here tonight. And it's just amazing how, we decided lighting this. I am a mother. I'm a wife of 30 plus years. Just here to really join in and listen to these women and share a little bit as well.
Miss Kelly.
I am Kelly Litback. I am the Executive Director of Childproof America, based out of Katy.
Oh, wow.
Thank you for having me tonight.
We're so
We're glad you're
here.
here, Kate. I'm Aisha Tate, and I am here, of course, to remind you that you matter, that you love, that you're beautiful, and a gift that's meant to contribute to life. We are dealing with domestic violence this month, and sometimes it can make you feel a certain way, but we want you to understand that regardless of the place that you find yourself in, you can escape, that you can rise above it, because there is a place for you. There is hope for you. So we're here to provide hope. We're here sharing our stories, hoping that it'll bring healing. We're here because you need to know that you are not alone. So we're here to remind you that you are loved. You do matter. You're beautiful. And regardless of what's happened, you can still give your gift to life.
All right, Stella.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stella Keinama, an author of The Abused Queen. I just released
And I am just, I forget to say who I am because all the time, like the last 2 or 3 weeks, because I'm just really what is going on. I mean, abuse, but all of most often is split. Place. And so I just if relationship as well, it is not okay. And sometimes children, well, most and actual go around dealing with
So one of the like what you were saying in my family guns situation that we've had really from those anxiety level and her. And I think that because I think for women who have but that's the beginning of your journey, and there's just still so my husband's ex-military, so I know very well what that is. And I've always equated that to war zone or to soldiers who have been in those trauma places, never to domestic violence. So that has just really opened my eyes and my heart, and my level of compassion is just so different for women who are out of the situation but still going through that process of that trauma.
Kelly?
You are so completely spot on with that. Trauma-informed care is so critically important to individuals who have experienced trauma. I think many will believe that if they go to their pastor, which is great, you know, for that counseling, or even to their Christian counselor, that will give them the support they need. But in reality, it's a very specialized trauma-informed care that these individuals need to go through in order to really pinpoint and heal that trauma.
Yes, yes, yes.
And let me say this as well, because as pastors, we need to know our limits for sure. And also, you know, my words, you know, I just come on down, stay in your lane, that kind of stuff. Because
Right.
we are not, if you are not a counselor, bona fide counselor, pastors, you're not at liberty to counsel. You can give spiritual advice, and most often I know with us, our spiritual advice would be to get counseling from
Yes.
someone who has been,
Licensed.
that specialized and licensed in that particular area. Because those individuals, I'm telling you, I've been in very dark places, and we've talked about that, where your psyche is, I felt like my psyche was split. I was split, my mind was split in two, fragmented pieces. And what I didn't need was people telling me to just pray it away and all of this kind of stuff. We need people that have been, that specializes, that can inform us, because sometimes it is so deep and it is so dark that you cannot counsel individuals out of those places. You just really need to know what you can and cannot do. Okay? I mean, we even have insurance to make sure that our ministers stay in their lane, because you need to know what you are doing. And so, Kelly, you want to tell us a little bit about your story?
Yes. So I'm going to talk about an issue that is so serious and really quite scary.
Yes.
And I really want to start by saying we are not here to scare parents. I want to say that first and foremost. I want this to be framed in a place of empowerment.
Come on.
And this is what we are about. We need to first state the facts, and then we need to offer real, effective solutions. So nobody wants to put child and sex trafficking in the same sentence. It does not go together. But the reality is that we live in a beautiful community. We live in Katy, and we live in Fort Bend and Harris County and Montgomery County. We have great schools and great churches. But the reality is sex trafficking has infiltrated our communities. It is in our schools, unfortunately. It is even in our churches. It is in our malls, our coffee houses. So the absolute best defense as a parent against this crime is education and awareness. That is absolutely key. So for the last 10 years, I've been blessed to work in the Harris County Juvenile Probation Department. I worked with high-risk youth. Absolutely love the kids that I worked with. I wrote a book for kids and letting them know, about the teen issues and how they can go to the Bible and get, spiritual and scripture support to really kind of maneuver all those things that kids deal with during those teen years. But What my book did not contain is anything about sex trafficking. I had no idea what it was until, unfortunately, it hit my own family. My daughter is a varsity athlete, grew up in Katy ISD, absolute precious angel, a good girl, baptized when she was 9 years old. She grew up in the church, but she had a vulnerable season, and somebody in her high school was watching for that and targeted her, and our lives were forever changed. Now, many parents would never come forward publicly about something that's so painful and so private, so sensitive, but the Lord has called me to be a voice for this crime, so we together can combat this, because if we do not bring this into the light and out of the dark, then children will suffer those consequences. And I've had parents say to me, not face to face, but on social media, I believe you're scaring people. And that's why I start out saying I'm not here to scare people. But what is really scary is when your child is missing and you know that they're in the hands of a bad guy who wants to exploit your kid. That's fear. That's a fear that we lived for 40 days when my daughter disappeared. Childproof America, number one, first and foremost, is about education and awareness. That's number one. Because the good news is, this is very textbook. If parents understand the steps and the strategies that traffickers use to exploit our kids and the whole grooming process, wow, you can really identify it very early on before it gets so far into the process that you are in big trouble. So we do presentations everywhere and anywhere with parents, with educators, with law enforcement, really helping them understand the steps that the traffickers use. But in addition to that, it's really important for parents that unfortunately have already found themselves in a position where their child is missing and most likely in a trafficking position. Those parents need help. When our daughter went missing in 2016 and it became very public, unfortunately, social media, enabled that to happen. We were approached by every nonprofit everywhere in Texas offering help. We were actually exploited. Our fear, our desperation was exploited by a team of men who said, if you give us all this money, we will guarantee the safe return of your child. When you are in a place of fear, you will lay down your life to save your kid's life. And unfortunately, that is what we did, and it made the situation worse. We were simply in a position that we were ill-equipped to handle. We did not understand how this works. We did not understand how to use social media in a way that would help us. It was a complete disaster for our family. It was very bad. So as I launched Childproof America, something I feel so passionate about, obviously because of my personal story, I looked at the gaps. I looked at the major issues we had through our experiences, and then I started looking throughout Texas and throughout the country. What organizations are out there that are serving parents? And guess what? I came up with zero.
Oh my God.
How can that be possible when parents are on the front lines working in the defense of our children? How can that be possible? So we developed a program called Family Guides. Family Guides is training and vetting volunteers that will come alongside that family and walk alongside that family and help them understand their options to get support from law enforcement, whether your child's a minor, whether your child's an adult. It's really important to understand those laws because they're very different, obviously, from a child to an adult. And then also to protect families from the exploitation and then help them recover that child and get that child to safety and get the care that they need, because that is exactly what you said. That trauma-informed counseling is absolutely critical, and it's going to be a long, most likely a lifelong process. So here's the good news I want to share with everybody here tonight. I've got good news. We just got the call about an hour ago that our Family Guides program just got funded by the George Foundation out of Fort Bend County. Yes. Praise God.
Oh, my goodness.
Praise God.
And what does that mean?
That means that beginning in January, you actually will have somebody other than me helping. I'm helping as much as I can, but I've been manning the ship, but I'm one person. So now I have somebody that we've already interviewed. We've already identified her as an expert. She knows law enforcement. She has been in this work for so long. She's so passionate. We are going to man this Family Guides program, and we are going to launch in January so families can get the help they need. And oh, by the way, everything we do is free to the families.
Wow.
Free to the
No
families.
exploitation, huh?
And that,
Oh,
exactly.
My goodness.
Exactly.
Yes.
So,
That is awesome.
although I never in a million years thought I would be ever on this walk, never, ever would want this for anyone, it is where God placed us right now. And so we must be obedient, and we must do his work.
Oh, my goodness.
We must do his work, and we must get in front of this issue. And we are in a season of, right now, voting. We all need to get that out there and vote, because this is how it's going to change. Well, there's so many things we need, but we've got to put the people in office that are going to fight for our kids, that are going to fight for our families, that are going to write legislation, that are going to prosecute these offenders.
That's right.
This is what we need to do in the state of Texas. I want to make Texas the absolute model state to eradicate this crime against our kids, and then all the other states will follow suit. So just so blessed to be able to share what we're doing, and we want to support our families here in Katy and Houston and beyond. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's so good. So good.
I love what you're doing. I think that's so incredibly important, which brings me to a brief synopsis of my story. I never was abused, however, not physically, I should say, but it happened to my daughter because she was in the house with a person in our family who we knew was abusive. And one night it got too bad where he not only abused his wife, but he abused my mom and my daughter as well, and I was nowhere around. And, that's a horrible feeling, as you know, for your child to be abused. And so when I got the call, of course she was, panicky and screaming on the phone. I could barely make out what she was saying. And of course, that was the whole issue of I'm a parent that, we co-parent, her father and I. So it was the issue of she could be taken away, all of this thing, all the frightening things. And the first thing we did was, remove her from the situation, get distance between the person who did it and her. And we had to put them out, and we went into a hotel. And while we were in the hotel, I was holding her, and she fell asleep in my arms. And as I started by saying, I'm alive to, help people know that they're loved and they matter. But what happens when the person that you have to show this love to is the person that offended your child? They're your family member. It's a terrible place to be in. And in that moment, my daughter's sleeping in my arms, and I'm just crying, silently. And the enemy whispers to me, and he says, I want to see you love now.
Wow. That's powerful. Powerful.
And
That is when your faith is just so strong. That's when the rubber meets the road, and you are, okay, what's really in you? What are you made of? When it affects your child, boy, you're a mama bear, right?
Exactly that. But I'll come back to it, so tell me about your story.
Stella?
Yeah, I'll talk about domestic violence because I went into it not knowing anything about domestic violence. So I grew up in a single-parent home because my father passed when I was 10. And so I never saw anybody raise a hand on my mom. And so that was very strange. I never even understood what domestic violence is like. And so when I went into this marriage, I went fully unaware of what it is supposed to look like. But so in the beginning, it felt strange. I just couldn't put a finger on it. He didn't hit me. He didn't call names, but it just felt strange. And I couldn't identify because I've had prior relationships and nothing felt like this. And so I was trying to identify what is it about this relationship that is not right. And so I stayed trying to figure out what it is. What I didn't know then, and I know now, is that I was going through emotional abuse. And lucky enough is I was in school for nursing, and I went to school, and the teacher was trying to explain to us how abuse works. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going through this right now. And I was like, light bulb came in, and I was like, oh my God, but he hasn't hit me. Because I figured abuse is when somebody hits you. And it took a long time before he actually hit me, 4 years into the relationship. But the whole time, what you don't know is this emotional abuse is pretty much slapping you around. And your emotions are being bruised left and right. And so by the time he gets to the place where he can hit you, he's already brought you so far down that you have no value, self-value, you have no self-worth. And so he knows whatever I do to her now, I got her. And so I waited for the whole process to go through, not knowing what to do. And when I talk to people, they say, oh, well, homes are, hard. You just have to do your best, And so I didn't want to break a marriage, We want to hold on to some of these things. But we need to wise up and know when it's right to leave.
Yes.
We need to pray for wisdom. And pray for discernment, because sometimes we'll be waiting for the wrong thing. And one day I woke up, I have an 8-month baby, 8-month-old baby crawling on the floor. I'm right here, and my husband boiled water, a pot of hot water, and threw it to my face. And so from my face, from here to the chest, were burnt, like I was burnt, and the skin peeled off. This, what you see right now, is the miraculous work of God. Because he gave me a brand new skin. I didn't go through surgery. He just did his thing. And so I'm so grateful that I can talk about this. I don't talk about it from a point of bitterness or and forgiveness. I had to forgive the guy because it was good for me.
Yes.
And also, I know it was keeping me back from pursuing what I know God meant for me to be. So I come from this to let people know, to make them aware. Because even what you don't know will kill you, actually. Because I went into that not knowing what abuse is, but it didn't keep me from being abused.
Right.
And so the more we know, the better.
Right.
Yeah, so that's it.
I have a wheel, and someone will post it up in a little bit. But I was looking today, and I pulled this wheel, and I really, really, really can't wait till you guys just look at this wheel when it's posted up, and just look and see and look at some of the characteristics of abuse and an abusive relationship. And one thing, it talks about the physical violence, even sexual violence, and it has that. And I want you to kind of just tell me, did you see some of these areas, how a person can use coercion and threats? Being threatened. Did he threaten you?
Oh yeah, that's part of it. But that comes later. Usually the first thing is they isolate you. They isolate you from your very close family members and friends. And so they have you at a place where they are your best friend. And so whatever decision you are making, you have to check with them to where you don't have your own mind. And so you have to depend on what they think about everything. And so separation is the first thing. And then later, when you are falling into that trap, that's when they start saying, listen, things like, I can never imagine, or you cannot be with another man. See, like that's a threat. Or that's a threat. Yeah, and some things like, you can never leave me, or nobody else can raise my kid. Stuff like that. That's threatening. Because they are saying, whatever I do to you, you have to stay here because you can never go to another man. Nobody else can marry you. And so that's...
And that was the first thing, too. It says using isolation, isolating you, and that's really a control mechanism.
It is.
Because, and I see that, I used to see that quite a bit, like, you don't call, you're not hanging with your friends, and, what about family outings and stuff like that? Eventually, people start detaching themselves from those who they know and those who they love because they're being controlled. So, that subtle coercion to isolate, and therefore once you're isolated, then you lose your support system, and that's what it's all about, causing one to lose their support system. Okay, what about using economic abuse, which basically is, I'm not going to give you this money, you bring me all of your money, let's put our money together, I'm controlling the money. If you see that, run, rabbit, run. That kind of stuff,
That's
right?
True. That's very true.
Right.
That is very true.
Was that happening?
The whole cycle whole circle.
Wow. She's looking at the whole
It was there.
The whole circle.
Yes,
Another one is
yes.
using male privilege. Wow. And that is simply treating her like a servant, making all the big decisions, acting like the master of the castle, being the one who defines men and women's roles. And I'm just going to keep this real. We see that a lot in the church sector. You know, you need to be submissive. You need to obey and all of that different stuff, which all of that has to be in context. But you see this kind of stuff, and it can be really, I call it a form of spiritual abuse. And so we just really have to look at this stuff and make sure that we're training and teaching our children to move in these areas appropriately so that they're not put in that place to stay in a position of abuse.
No.
Okay? Using intimidation. Making her afraid by using looks, actions, gestures, smashing things, destroying her property, abusing pets, displaying weapons. You know, I've heard about that, where individual will, you know, she not directly threaten with a weapon, but just show you that I have them.
They'll put it in front of you, like
just show you that I have this weapon. And that can be probably used as well as human trafficking as well. All of those things will come about, and what it does is exactly what all of you guys have said. It demolishes your psyche. It breaks you down. It's almost a tactic. Well, it is most often tactics that are used in wars to just demoralize and humiliate, to bring you down to where you're totally and dependent on this individual.
That's right.
Right? And so these are the things that we have to look for, women, young women, because I've heard it, and I had an awesome woman come in. She did a domestic violence conference with me, Carolyn Thomas. And Carolyn Thomas was shot in the face directly. As a matter of fact, the guy killed her mom. When the mom opened the door, he killed the mom, and then he shot her in the face. The police thought she was dead. When she moved, he almost died because he could not believe that she survived that. And her testimonial to the young women that were at our conference was, you know, I thought it was cute when I was a teenager, and a boy would push me. You know, to me, that was love. He loved me so much that he's, you know, just don't want me to be with anybody or share me with anybody. But that's how abuse starts.
Right.
And once you accept it, it escalates. There's an escalation, right?
Oh, yes.
Because it went from the emotional abuse and then to the physical abuse, to the verbal abuse, mental. There's an escalation in abuse because really the individual is in that place to conquer and control. Okay? So I want to ask Kelly some questions as well. You know, I love statistics. Maisha just said, "Oh Lord, you and statistics." She sent me statistics and stuff now. Statistically, first of all, I saw that 1 in 4 women will be abused in a given relationship. 1 in 4 freaking women. That means 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 in 4 women are abused in a domestic violence, volatile, I call it being volatile violence relationship. Yes. And that's not okay. That is a huge number. And then not to mention the women that are in actuality murdered. You know, and that's why we took this time, because, you know, breast cancer is just, I mean, it's on the rise, but it's covered. People talk about it. They have marches about it, all of that kind of stuff. But women are losing their lives through human trafficking and domestic violence relationships and all of this different stuff. And I believe we have to bring more awareness to it.
Yes, we do.
Okay?
Yes.
We do.
Kelly?
I agree. Well, you know, there's so much symmetry between domestic violence and human trafficking. So for instance, you know, one of the scenarios for trafficking is the Romeo scenario. And that is a boyfriend Romeo figure that comes into the girl's life and just treats her like a queen and anything you need and you're beautiful, and then slowly starts to do the things exactly like a domestic violence situation, even though this is just a boyfriend. But that's how he is gaining her trust first, isolating her from her support system, and then introducing very casually threats. So force, fraud, and coercion are the 3 components to a human trafficking situation. It is so critical that our young girls understand that it's not love.
Amen.
If there's a sign and you know in your gut, this does not feel good, this is not right, you need to turn around and walk away and not look back. It is so important. And the same, if you see a girlfriend of yours going through the same thing, you need to speak up. See something, say something. It is not love if somebody makes you feel hurt.
Amen.
Girls are and boys are worthy of love and respect and honor, to be cherished and loved unconditionally. That is what we need to really focus on. We need to build up our youth
Come on.
so they do not fall in the hands of these predators that are going to play upon the vulnerabilities of these girls that just are looking to be loved and affirmed. But, you know, with trafficking, so many parents will say, oh, not my kid.
Wow.
Oh, and here, me, right here, this is me, okay? 3.5 years ago, that would be me.
Wow.
I worked in prison ministry.
Come on.
I wrote a book for teenagers. I raised my kids. I have a son as well. I raised them to know the good guy from the bad guy, you know, how you get played. This is what we had talked about over the dinner table. Even with all of that,
Wow.
yes, 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 it can infiltrate the all-American family, the Christian family, the two-parent family, the single-parent home.
right.
And that's what parents need to really, really be aware of, that you're not immune because you feel like you've been a great parent. You know, the number one age that kids are targeted are 12 to 14 years old.
Wow.
This is organized crime.
Wow.
It is extremely methodical and very strategic. And we need to say, I don't think my 12 to 14-year-old can really outsmart a criminal who has been trained to get control of your child emotionally. And that's what we need to really understand about trafficking.
The whole emotional part, I think that's important because, you know, oftentimes at that age, 12 to 14, my daughter's not that far from that, you see them developing, trying to figure out who they are. Even though you've trained them, they're still in their place trying to discover who they are. And at that time, you know, it can be difficult for parents because it's like, who is this child? Because you've trained them, you've done your part, but now they're in a place of discovery. So there can be rifts between you and them, and which opens the door, if you're not careful, for them to sneak right on in. So I think as parents, we have to be aware of, though we may have rifts, to still show this love and affection and pay attention that they're not becoming isolated from us because of this. And check their phones and check,
Yes.
you know, their internet surfing.
Yes, and I was just going to address that. Thank you for saying that with social media. Wow, we are living in a technology age.
my
What a
goodness.
blessing, right? We can access anything we want to know in just 2 seconds. However, unfortunately, it's opened up our kids to the entire universe
Right.
where they can come into your child through a device. They can come into your child's life through a device. And so here's my thing. My kids said to me, oh my gosh, Mom, you want my password? You're the only mom ever that wants my password. You know what I say? Too bad, so sad. Too bad, so sad. So we do not be friends with your kids. Be their parent, because I'm going to tell you,
Yes.
people are looking to get into your kid's life, and you've got to be a step ahead of them. You got to know what's going on that device. I don't care if your kids get mad at you. They're gonna thank you when they're an adult, and they're gonna say thank you for protecting me, because that is our job as a parent, is to protect our kids.
Kelly, can I ask you some questions? I looked up some more statistics and some other stuff. And this is really from the U.S. Department of State. It talks about how to identify and assist a trafficking victim.
Yes.
And so a couple of things it says is that number one, we should be alert.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful for some of these flight attendants because they are very alert. There's flight attendants that knew right off that something is not right with this. You know, this man is with this child and so on and so forth. And they've been able to help children to get out of human
Yes.
trafficking. So it says with some of the questions and some of the things that we should look at is the living conditions of an individual. Because it's not like people that are human trafficked sometimes are just isolated in areas. Sometimes they are allowed to move all over the place, but their mind has been yeah, exactly. And so they said we should look at living conditions. If it's poor living conditions, multiple people living in a cramped space. Okay? As a matter of fact, they just found 123 children last
Yes,
week
yes.
in Detroit,
Yes.
Michigan, that were being human trafficked.
Yes.
123 children living in deplorable conditions. And guess what? There's still like 170 that's still missing.
Yes.
They were looking for 301.
Yes.
Okay, so these are the things that this is not getting like national attention. I ran across that because I was searching for stuff.
Yes.
So this is not like a CNN thing. To me, it should have been a great CNN thing, right, Kelly?
Yes, yes, and it will be, trust me.
Come on.
It's coming.
Oh, really?
Yes, ma'am. Oh,
Come
yes.
on, push
We're
it.
blowing the top right off of this.
Oh, we got to get behind her.
Yes.
We will get behind you.
Thank you, thank you. So here is something that I would like to say in response to the statistic. You know, so often we are not going to see the living conditions. You know, we're not going to be in a position to see those conditions. We are going to see somebody on an airplane, in a hotel, in our church, walking in the mall, in the coffee house. Here's the reality. 200 children are reported missing every single day in Harris County.
Jeez.
It is so hard, so difficult for law enforcement to distinguish, okay, is this a runaway or is this a child that is being trafficked? So law enforcement needs to continue their training to really ask the correct question of the parents so they can really say, is this a trafficking situation or is this a runaway? Because Harris County, the fourth largest county in the country, does not have the manpower to do a thorough investigation of 200 kids every single day. Wow. So we need to be able to capture the ones that are being trafficked, and then we need to teach our law enforcement officers how to execute an investigation and get that child to safety. But for instance, when a law enforcement officer pulls over a vehicle for a traffic stop, and they see a very suspicious activity or, you know, kind of scenario there, they need to know the right questions to ask. But the reality is right now there's 79,000 domestic human trafficking minors in here in Texas, and I think that's very low. And we as taxpayers here spend $6.6 billion every single year. $6.6 billion in helping these victims recover. If we just took 1% of that and put it in effective prevention,
Of course.
oh my goodness, what that number would change. These are people's lives.
Oh my
This is your tax dollars, but these are children's lives and the trauma they experience. I have to say as a parent, how can my child ever allow somebody to control their thinking, control their behavior, control their actions? That's a big one for me to try to wrap my head around. How can somebody gain that much emotional control? It's powerful stuff, y'all. This is much more dangerous. It's much more front of this. Right now, we're reactive. We're not being proactive right now.
Oh my goodness. Stella, so tell me something about how did you finally come out of that? Of course, when the burning and all of that kind of stuff, was that like the end of it? Was he charged with a crime? What happened?
Yeah, I look at it from both sides. I say it was so bad, of course. That's how it separated us. The bonds and everything, that's pretty much put the divorce right there, you know. And so that was the end of our relationship and of the marriage. And yes, he was charged but it's strange to say he's free today.
How long was he in prison?
A few days. He got into some probation, and the whole story is in the book. I prefer if you read the book, because you'll see where all that is coming from. And the thing is, why I decided to bring this awareness, mostly, and the main thing, is to bring glory to God, because this is a miracle. I am a miracle.
Yes.
Just me being who I am right now, it's a miracle. And it's all about God just changing what was meant to destroy me and using it to bless somebody else and bless me. And so for the meaning of this book, the reason why I decided to write this book is...
Please show it. It's beautiful, too.
Is it
The
visible
abuse
there?
queen.
Yeah, and the reason, the title, I'll explain a little bit about the title is because we are queens.
Of
But
course.
we are queens. We are meant to be queens. The Bible calls us that. It says we are royalty in 1 Peter 2:9. It says we are masterpiece. But most of us, the reason why we end up in such situations, when I look back, I realize it's because I didn't know who I was.
Oh, come on.
I didn't know my value. I didn't really believe in myself. I didn't believe in what the Word of God says I am. And so because I did not, somebody took advantage of that. My low self-esteem, my lack of confidence, all that played a part into getting into that. Because even when I got in and I saw the love was different, I could not figure out, okay, this is not good for me.
Wow.
Because when you know who you are, there are things you cannot tolerate.
Right.
You know, and so because I didn't know that, I tolerated, and he went on adding more and adding more and adding more, and look at where it ended. And so majority of us are suffering because we don't know what God says we are. And the queen, if you don't know who you are, you'll be used, misused, and abused. And so it's about us, we figure out, and I came up with a movement, pretty much, of letting people know who they are. Because I
Awesome.
figured this, if me not knowing who I was got me into this, it's going to continue. And so I am having this moment of royal awakening.
I love it.
Yeah, it's about women knowing they are queens, and you deserve to be loved right.
And of course, your value.
Yeah.
And you're educated. I mean, you're a nurse. I mean, you're a registered nurse. And I mean, that's education.
Yes.
So it can affect those even who are educated.
Oh,
it has
yes.
nothing to do with
Oh, yes.
how educated you are, how much money you have. It transcends all of that.
It does.
And it can affect you if you don't know who you are.
That's true.
You know, and so we have a tendency as women, we are emotional. We're
yeah.
made that way. We're made to love. We will love. And so sometimes it's just, you have to see it, look at it head on, and know where it's headed.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I'm just, I can't believe it, because I look at you and you are extremely beautiful.
Oh, thank
and
you.
I mean, to have, and she's gonna post it as well, the burns and all of
Yes,
that. She said
yes.
it wasn't a beautiful sight, but this should not be. I'm a nurse as well. This should not be. She should have like scarring everywhere.
yes.
And this woman is beautiful. Just
Yes.
supernatural. That was supernaturally done.
Yes, it was.
It was
It was.
supernaturally done.
Can we
was.
talk a little bit about what she said about the esteem thing? Because, you know, we go back to saying, oh, you're educated, but I think we need to admit and make it plain that education does not mean esteem.
Of course.
And so that's why every day when we start the show and every day of my life, I'm always telling people you're loved. It's not to be cute or coy,
Yes.
but I know that people don't know that.
They don't.
Thankfully, I grew up with a father who showed that to me, with parents who instilled that in me, and a relationship with God that instilled love in me. So I understood that. So that is my heart's desire, for people to recognize you are loved, you are beautiful,
Yes.
you do matter,
Yes.
and you have something to contribute. Because I think that's what happens sometimes. You stay in relationships because you feel like, well, if I go into another one, I have nothing really to contribute. At least here, he's accepting this little part of me, when there's so much more. So
Yes.
that I will continue to tell people you're loved, you matter, because it's not a funny, cute thing. It's the truth. And until you believe that about yourself, you may find yourself used, abused, and misused.
And that's the key right there.
That's right.
Until you believe that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because saying it and believing it is just two different things.
Yes.
So you have to believe that. That has to become a part of who you are.
Right.
Knowing that I am loved, that I do have something to contribute, that in education, none of that, it doesn't matter if you do not know who you are. And if you do not understand that you can be better, you can rise above where you are. I mean, we have Kelly, and you can look at her and see she was an awesome parent, that she didn't take any smack, but she loved the heck out of her children, all of that kind of stuff. But still in all, children, especially young people, there's that age where they fall into a place where a lot of times they become vulnerable. Things happen in life. I mean, I have my grandchildren, my granddaughter, and I pray for her all the time, because it was some things that happened in life that put her in a place where I knew that she was very vulnerable. And it wouldn't have taken much. So we just have to really, on the back end as parents, really be alert and be aware. I know we are busy. I'm totally busy. And most of us, we live very busy lives here in the States. But if you just step back a little bit and be alert and be aware and just have that sense of discernment, something maybe we can make sure that our children avoid some of these areas.
I would like to bring up something that we have not addressed here, I think is absolutely critical. We need to raise our boys to be good men.
Come
right
on.
there.
Right.
What is feeding the human trafficking industry? It's the buyer.
Woof.
Who is raising a hand to their precious wives? It's the man. This is what we need to really look at, the entire mentality of the men that are being raised to do these things to women, to exploit women, to sell women, to hurt women. What is that? That is a very, very big issue that we need to look at. So I have a son as well, and I've raised him since he was a little boy. Don't ever raise a hand to a girl. You are to respect a girl. You do not use abusive language or inappropriate language. Girls are to be cherished and honored. We need to raise our boys in the church. We need to raise them to be honorable men and to not buy and purchase these girls.
Yes, and I like what you were telling me earlier before the show, because both of you said something very key. It really is prevention. So it's the prevention of doing things with these young girls or girls who are away at school and really helping them understand their self-worth, and then giving them that avenue to us as mature women build that worth in them. Because if you don't know what it is, you can't obtain it. Someone has to almost impart it to you. So that's why it says the older women should teach the younger women for a reason. It was Timothy's grandmother that, imparted into him. It's a reason for that, because you have something to give. So we have to come from this place of selfishness and be smart with the prevention, right? So yes, all of those things, but also strategy in how we prevent this. But you had talked earlier about those boys who don't come from a home where someone is able to build them, how we can go in and be volunteers and work with those at-risk youth. You want to share that?
Yes, so I was just so honored to work with about 300 incarcerated youth between ages of 13 and 17. About 20% of those young men already had at least one child. But the key was that I saw over and over again with my students, they did not have a male role model to show them how to honor and love a woman, how to be the head of a household. They did not know. We all need to go into these detention centers and work with these men who are going to be out in the streets, and they have a mentality many times of survival, of if it's not you, it's me, I'm going to kill you. I mean, it was a very big awakening to see kind of their mindset. We have to come alongside our young men. Every young man needs a positive male role model, or they will fall into the trap of becoming a pimp, becoming a buyer, becoming an exploiter. They are the juvenile justice system is packed with kids that are tomorrow's pimps.
Wow. I saw something that was so awesome. It was an African policeman, and he had a baby. He was carrying a baby in front. I posted it. I post this kind of stuff. And he had the little thing on his head, the basket on his head. And his whole deal was he brought young men and older men, because there's really not big time laws for abusing your wives. And so he saw his mom get abused horribly. And so he wants to be the trendsetter of teaching the men how to love their women, how to take care of the children. And so they took the babies, they carried the babies and put the baskets on their head. And it was tons of them walking the streets and stuff like that. That's where it needs to start. That's where it needs to start. And for those of you, and I was looking, because I'm going to mix it up with the Bible too. I was looking today. I'm like, now what can we even, where is it even in the Bible? I mean, this stuff is not addressed, but in actuality it is. In Judges 19 and 20, I find this horrific story of this woman, this concubine, that runs away from this Levite. You know, and the Levite was these awesome people, these priests and all of that. And he's going away, and he finds her and he brings her back with him. And these men of the city rapes her, beats her, and abuses her until she's dead. And so that thing was so horrific in the scripture that they call for all of the tribes to come out and fight against those people. So that tells me that it's not accepted. It is not acceptable. God does not accept it. It was never meant to be in this fashion. So scripturally, we have a responsibility, church. 4 walls, come down. Let's do the Jericho thing. Bring the 4 walls down, and we must get involved with people like Kelly to make sure that it doesn't touch us, to make sure that it's not in our neighborhoods, to make sure that it's not in our country. How about that? You know, that we need to go and rally for stiffer laws. What in the world is he doing out on probation for throwing hot water on his wife, or doing 5 years for sex trafficking? What is that? To me, that's life sentences. You know what I'm saying, Kelly?
Absolutely. That is so key, because right now, the bad guy says, wow, the profit is high, the risk is low.
Oh, goodness
I mean,
gracious.
this is the #1, the fastest growing crime in the world is sex trafficking. So we are definitely getting better. We're moving in the right direction to give these offenders very harsh penalties. We have got to lock them up. We've got to take them on the streets. We do not victimize the victim. And that's a big issue as well that we're working with the governor's office on, that many times the victims are hit with charges as well, because maybe they were in possession of a drug or, you know, prostitution. We have to support our victims and not criminalize our victims.
Can I ask a question? We, I believe in penalty for, for things that happen. But when we're talking about, stiffer penalties and all of this stuff, but what happens when a person is, victimizing others, but the issue is they were a victim first? I think that something needs to be put in place, since you're in that position where we go in, like you said, for these are children that you're dealing with, but what about the young man who was overlooked? Nobody ever dealt with his issue of being victimized. He was raped, he was assaulted, and now it's not that he's assaulting others in that way, but he became abusive because of this anger. I feel like maybe there should be something in place for them where we get to help them if they're brave enough to come out and admit, okay, look, I have an issue, I want help. Then we get them counseling or whatever is necessary, because not all of these people who are doing this are horrible people. Some of them have been put in situations that we can't even fathom.
Well, it's very much a cycle. It's very much a cycle. And it's a very difficult issue because, here's a grown man who is 30 years old victimizing a child, but you go back to his,
I'm not talking about children.
then you go back to his childhood, and he himself was a victim. It's a very tough place to be, and you hear that in a defense. Well, this man was victimized as well. It's tough. That's why it's so important as parents, when you know that your child was victimized at a young age, you need to get them that help that they need for that trauma-informed care, going back to that, because the cycle continues and continues, just like I think what Lady Gail said at the beginning. Kids do what they see. Kids are raised and they are desensitized to abuse. If this is how they've grown up, they repeat those behaviors because it's their mindset, and I see it over and over again.
And I think we should work with the young, because we went into Crockett State School for years. If you can get it at that level, that's one thing. But 30-year-old men, they got to go to prison, and they got to go for a long time. I mean that. They got to go to prison. They need to go for a long time, because it's rare, unless God does it, that the individual will change. And we're talking 10-year-old children. We're talking 12-year-old children. So we have to be advocates for those who cannot be advocates for themselves. And so we need stiffer laws. We do. And I'm the first one. I will rally. I will help. Look, vote in, vote out, whatever. But we need people that understand hands that these are our children.
Oh, yeah.
These are children that cannot defend themselves. These are children, I mean, thousands of children are missing, millions of children are missing, and a lot of them are being abused as we speak. They're being treated. I was talking to a young lady last week, and she was telling me 2 girls were sex trafficked from Baytown, and they were having sex with them while they were ministrating and all of this kind of stuff. They didn't care. They were abused, so abusive and so, just cruel and harsh, to where these people most often have become desensitized and, to me, oftentimes demonized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we have to
Yeah.
protect our children.
Well,
we have to.
It's just a really, unfortunately, we don't live in a pretty world. It is just very, like you said, we're not even touching on the reality of that. Like, a lot of us saw the movie Taken, and we wanted to be the dad
Oh.
that went to go kill
Yes.
everybody, right? But that was a movie. So in
right.
real life, this thing is very, very deep, and it's very dirty, and it does need to be dealt with. We do need to have stricter laws. We need to make sure that we bring that awareness. I know in our neighborhood, I'm an advocate of the app and the search to see where a registered pedophile lives, and I let my children know. I've always done that because it's a reason for that. People who have at that age been through that, and you can speak to that, that is a desire that is not going to be just counseled away or coached away or processed away. That's a desire that they have nurtured for years, and this is a very serious thing to take these children and the things that happen with them. It's not like they just taking, little Shanae up and dropping her off in another place. No, they're taking them up and doing some horrific things to these kids.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we need to, I agree with you. It's just we can't even touch it because it is so intense. When you really start looking at what happens to these kids, you get a righteous anger.
Yeah, right,
really.
right,
I
right.
just
You get,
wanna
you
make
get
sure
very
I'm clear.
upset. Oh, no, I'm not.
No, 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 we
Not
got
to
you.
that.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
just
not to that.
speaking in
Okay.
general. Because, we're talking to people all over, not just to us right here.
Oh, no.
So we're just, I agree with what you're saying, that we really just need to bring that awareness and really drive home those laws and support you and those in that fight.
So I really want to encourage all of your viewers to get on our newsletter distribution. You will be able to find out about our education seminars. You will be able to also, we have one coming out. I just looked at the newsletter today. We're doing some edits. It goes out, I believe, Thursday. Which politicians are really leading the charge in this effort? You need to know. We are in a voting season, obviously. We're, pre-voting right now, and then November 6th, a huge day. Know who your politicians are that are fighting for your families.
Wow.
So please go on childproofamerica.org
And what would
and
they look
sign
under?
up. It's newsletter, sign up. We will go ahead and get you on there so you can find out how you can get this education and awareness to keep your family safe.
That's good.
Yes, definitely. Stella?
I wanted to say, to add on to this, like I said, about self-value, self-awareness. It's very important. We have to work in ourselves, in our own life, and look back and what broke us, because broken people attract broken people.
Oh, my goodness.
And so,
Awesome.
yeah, because I was broken, I attracted somebody who was equally broken, and let's look at the aftermath of that. And so we need to look back, because even after going through the statistics, I'm sure you can look that up, it says when we go through violence, domestic violence, after that, majority of the people go into addictions.
Of course.
Because you have no energy to rise up from this. Some of these things are so big, so bad, like you don't know how to get up from that kind of mess and become somebody later. And so I want to encourage anybody, whether you went through rejection, abuse, whatever it is you went through it, you still matter, you still have a full life ahead of you.
Yes,
God
yes.
gave you a
Ellie?
Oh,
Thank you.
thank
You guys,
you,
come
thank
on.
you.
Childproof America. Come
right.
on, let's get behind it. Let's get behind the abuse queens. Let's solicit our own. Let's help our own. Because, our perspective change when it hits us. When it hits my children and it hits Maisha's children or those people that are close in that I know, my whole perspective really goes from 0 to 3,000 when it hit my family, or it hit someone that's dear to me or I love. And so even with Kelly, when I talked to her, I twist and turn all night because my mind kept going into those places like, how do you come out of that? How do you survive? How do you sleep at night? How do you get up in the morning? How do you put your clothes on? Because it's a whole different outlook when it hits yours. You know, the way you think about things change when it hits yours. Yes. And so I know, I hate that it happened to you, but God is so faithful. Yes. That what the enemy meant for evil, yes, he knew that Kelly would rise up and she would take it personal. Mm-hmm. And that she would go after every yes, human trafficker, every demonic influence.
I'm burning the house down.
Burning the house down. So,
yes.
So to God be the glory. Come on, Maisha, and I'll pray us out today. Thank you, God. Beautiful.
You're not an orphan. You're not forgotten. You're not alone. There's freedom available to you. You can escape where you are. There's more for you. This is not the end. Consider it a new beginning. You can rise above. Escape fear with love. There's hope for you. So much for you to do. Be freed from where you are. He can remove the inner scars and heal you within. Free you from the weight of the pain and the sin. Love's here for you. You don't have to live abused. You can rise in God. Hide. Escape the wrath. Escape the pain. Escape the blame and all of the shame. You can arise. You can go high. You can ascend. Let His love in. Let His love in.
Father, we thank you on today and we bless you for being the best God and the biggest God. You're an awesome God, and you're a God that's so mighty to save, Daddy. So we ask you, Daddy, that you would go into those places, those who are being human trafficked and those who are being domestically abused, Father. Father, you know the plans that you have for them, to give them a hope and a future and an expected end, to do them good and not evil, Father. So today we ask that the weapons that are formed against those who are in those positions, Father, that they will not prosper, that you would deliver, Father, deliver. You are a God that can deliver from every addiction, every affliction, deliver from abuse. So today we ask that you would deliver, that you would go into the minds of the people that are being led astray, the young girls, the young men who are in those relationships, Father. Do what only you can do. We love you on today. We ask that you would bless your people. Bless Kelly in her endeavors, Daddy. Bless Childproof. Bless that organization. Father, for you have called her into the kingdom for such a time as this. So I ask that those who know, Father, about this place, those who don't know, that you would call them to rally around her. Father, that we may do what you called for us to do, that we may protect your children. Your word said that children should come unto you. Father, so on today, we bless you and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.